Most people confuse these three names. If you don't know the difference between these essential electronics terms, this video is for you. Before diving into the technical details, let's quickly compare RS232 and RS485. In terms of speed, although both are generally slower than SPI, RS485 can achieve a higher maximum data rate than I2C over short distances and offers a much higher data rate than RS232. RS232 typically supports communication over only about 15 meters, whereas RS485 can reach distances of up to 1,200 meters. When it comes to noise immunity, thanks to its differential signaling mechanism, RS485 is highly robust against electrical noise. If you need to communicate with a large number of devices, RS485 can support up to 32 devices on the same bus, whereas RS232 is a point-to-point communication standard that supports only 2 devices. Finally, let's explore their most common applications. RS232 is mainly designed for point-to-point communication. That's why it's commonly used for PLC programming, CNC machines, laboratory instruments, barcode scanners, and router console ports. RS485, on the other hand, is built for connecting multiple devices over long distances. It's widely used in PLC networks, SCADA systems, industrial sensors, motor drives, and smart energy meters. So, if you only need to connect one device to another, RS232 is usually the right choice. But if you need a reliable industrial network with many devices sharing the same communication line, RS485 is the standard you'll most likely find. Now, let's take a closer look from a technical point of view. UART is one of the most fundamental communication protocols. Its job is to generate a serial bit stream using the configured baud rate and timing. If we could remove the chip's package, we would see that the UART is simply one of the many peripherals integrated into the silicon die. UART communication can be implemented over different physical layer standards, such as RS232 and RS485. To interface a UART with these physical layers, 2 of the most widely used transceiver ICs are the MAX232 for RS232 and the MAX485 for RS485. RS232 commonly uses a DB9 connector, while RS485 typically uses a Phoenix connector. RS232 uses 2 independent signal wires, one for transmitting data and another for receiving it. This makes RS232 a full-duplex communication standard, since the TX and RX channels each have their own dedicated wire. RS485, on the other hand, uses a differential pair of wires for each communication channel, making it much more resistant to electrical noise. In its most common configuration, a single differential pair is shared for both transmitting and receiving, resulting in half-duplex communication. If full-duplex communication is required, a second differential pair must be added. In other words, a full-duplex RS485 interface uses 4 wires, with separate differential pairs for the TX and RX channels. In our example, we're using only one differential pair for RS485, so it operates in half-duplex mode. In other words, the A and B lines can either transmit data or receive data, but they cannot do both simultaneously. At this point, I guess you're also curious about the role of these 2 transceiver ICs, so let's look at them. The MAX232 performs 2 main functions: voltage level conversion and logic inversion. The MAX485 also has 2 key functions: differential signal transmission and differential signal reception. Now, let's take a closer look at each of them. The MAX232 has 2 primary functions. First, it converts the UART logic voltage levels, typically 3.3 or 5 volts, into the positive and negative voltage levels required by the RS232 standard. Second, it performs logic inversion. In UART, A logic high is represented by a positive voltage, whereas in RS232, a logic high is represented by a negative voltage. The MAX232 automatically inverts the logic levels while converting the voltage levels, allowing the UART and the RS232 interface to communicate correctly. The MAX485 also has two primary functions. First, it converts the single-ended UART transmit signal into a differential signal for transmission over the A and B lines. Second, it converts the received differential signal on the A and B lines back into a standard UART logic signal. By transmitting and receiving differential signals instead of single-ended signals, the MAX485 significantly improves noise immunity, enabling reliable communication over much longer distances and in electrically noisy environments.